Well, this morning it is Scott Walters' day, and Scott, I've been watching you on X this last week. You've been a busy man because even though there wasn't any new videos, I don't think I saw any new videos of any of those 27 jillion companies that are now making bots. But there was patent things. There were companies making new decisions and suggesting they had new capabilities. Anyway, I'm just going to turn it over to you, and I'll interrupt when I think it's appropriate.
Okay, yeah. Hi, Randy. Welcome back from your vacation. You look rested, tanned, and ready, or something like that.
No, no, no. I was
Not
going
sure
the
about the
opposite
tanned. Yeah,
direction. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. Exactly,
yeah. No
exactly.
tans in
So,
New England. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So, yeah. I get there wasn't really that much news in last week as far as any new bots coming out or changes. To any of them, any big announcements, anything like that. So I think maybe everyone is like hunkered down and actually working on it and not releasing stuff yet. Though I think we might be seeing a thing in a couple of weeks. Is that I've found indications just kind of through back channels that some announcements people were thinking of doing this month might be just delayed a few weeks or something like that. So we should be expecting some news coming on in. But I think the main news has been that, again, through this humanoid bots community that we have set up, is a lot of people that joined in there are contributing, interesting finds. And there's one gentleman named Seti Park in Korea that likes going through patents and finding patents, and he's just bringing a lot of them up. And so I had a chance to go through and look at a lot of them, and there were at least 4 filings for Optimus patents regarding that. Now,
Wow.
It's really interesting reading. Well, I don't know if it's interesting. It's rather curious, trying to read patents and exactly understand it, because it's like any form of law. There's a certain way that things are done, certain kinds of language that you use that may not, in the normal lay English, come across as what you think it means, and it probably has a very precise kind of reference or meaning. But it's still kind of interesting to go through and find out what's going on. But the main thing is that I would say that we didn't really glean anything new from these patents that we haven't already known or seen from the publicly available data. And all the patents that were being shown here are like an international application, which is like seems to have been in the past couple of months or something like that, which might be why they're surfacing right now. However, they reference patent applications, U.S. patent applications that go back to September 30th, 2022.
Okay.
And do you know what's significant about that date?
No, I'm sorry. You're gonna no. Yeah.
That's the same day as AI Day 2.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, that basically they came out and told the world everything that was going on with the bot and all sorts of pictures and images and stuff. And so it looks like they decided that they needed to file the patents before they went public with that. Otherwise, other people could suddenly look at what's going on there and file a patent on their own.
Right.
So these seem to be mainly defensive patents, just to put it on the record of what they did, what they think is, some unique discoveries or art that they've come up with. And I don't know if they're going to be granted, or if they have been granted, or if there's really anything there. But the main thing is they just want to make sure someone else doesn't swoop in and says, that's ours. You owe us royalties right now, or you can't use this or anything else. So there was a hand patent, and the hand patent is the 11 degree of freedom one that was shown during there. Actually, a lot of the images were lifted right out of that presentation and put right into the patent application. A lot of dry language in there talking about how it's going to work. And does it give us any insights in 22 degree freedom?
No.
It's not even the Gen 2 hand. I mean, it really is like the Gen 1 hand that they're showing. And they talk about a lot of things we already said. It's like, well, it's like 2 knuckles on it. It's using tendon drives. They talk a little bit about how the actuators work. The only curious thing was this language about how these tendons are sort of mounted, going through the fingers, and how that mechanism works. And again, I'm looking at it, I'm trying to think, is there really anything innovative here? Because a lot of animatronics have been doing this for years. So some people might say, no, there's plenty of prior art in that area. Just, there's nothing patentable there. But they had one curious thing where they talk about the mounting of the tendon on the tip. And that, they talk about being coupled there or anchored, and how the whole linkage mechanism is going to work. and they talk about it being potted. I don't know if we talked about that
talked about
earlier,
that
about
last
that
week,
language. Yeah. Again, it's like, okay, are they using that to somehow get some sort of feedback control? And then there was one for knee, and then some others. But I think the latest one, and again, it's like, it was a holiday weekend, right? And like one of these new patents kind of comes up on Friday, and then is on Saturday. So like my whole weekend was just going through and reading these and trying to understand what they were talking about. So the knee patent, again, it's hard to say if there's anything novel there, except that they're just covering their bases and giving a little bit of idea how it's working, which again came right out of those presentations. So not a whole lot new. And then they had the most curious one, and that is the one regarding the actuators and actuator optimization or selection, something like that. That's the title of the patent. So it's like, oh, it's all about the actuators. This ought to be interesting. Let's start reading about it. The abstract seems to talk about that. And then there's just like this long listing talking about pretty much how the neural networks work in Optimus. Yeah, it was like there was nothing there about actuators, but just going on and on talking about what the configuration of the neural network should be like, the camera placement, the type of cameras they have. So they talk about there being 3 cameras in the head, and that there's one which is pretty much fisheye, so wide field of view, one which is a normal view, and one which is actually zoom. It's like, oh, that's interesting. So they get 3 right there. Then they talk about 2 cameras on the side. And again, that one's kind of the side, one's rear facing. So it sounds awful lot like the repeater camera you would have, like a B pillar in a rear camera. And they also talk about all the way in the back.
Wow.
So you have like a total of 8, and it sounds like almost similar to the description of what you see going around the Teslas already. And then they talk about how the different refresh rates that they have, and how the time integration they do of bringing these samples in, and the configuration of the neural network, and what you'd have to do the training. I'm just reading this whole thing. It's like, I think there was a cut and paste error. I think, whatever was the patent supposed to be for that, they put all that, because it's all it does. And so you go to this whole section where they're talking about stuff. Then you finally get in the claims section, and then what's in the claims section doesn't seem to have anything to do with what's going on. So I was like just a bit confused, except it gave us maybe some insight on the thought process, and talked about like occupancy networks and how all that works, and voxels, and just great insight. But it might be stale, because at that time that was like version 10 point something before they went to 11, where occupancy network and grammar of lanes, all this other stuff that is being talked about, and now it's all been kind of tossed out for end to end. So I'm not sure if this is like a feint that they're doing, that hoping people will read this like really closely and say, this is the architecture, and maybe it's not. So yeah, if you want to go through and look at that, that's a rather interesting read to give you a little bit of insight on maybe how full self-driving is working. But I think my main takeaway from it is that they really are leveraging full self-driving for the bot, and it may be almost like two-way, that there may be a certain amount of compute they have to free up to be able to work with Optimus, but there's also this idea of kind of cross training. Of using maybe almost the same kind of architecture to solve 2 completely different problems. And if you put them together, combined, you might get better results than if you kind of focus on only one problem alone.
Right.
Because a lot of it is about, a foundational model and understanding the world and how the world works. And a lot of times for the car to really understand what you have to do in certain situations, maybe you need to have some sort of training set that takes the point of view of what it's like to be a person. Right. It's like, you want to understand what pedestrians are up to, maybe you need to not just try to avoid them, but try to, because most drivers, if you think about it, we're not just drivers. A lot of times we are pedestrians.
Yeah.
And our experience of being pedestrians informs how we should drive.
Sure.
Because we know how pedestrians think, and we know what they may or may not do. We know what bicyclists do, because we do that as well. We know what they're trying to do to not get in trouble on the road. And we know the stupid things they might kind of do that you will anticipate. So there can be a lot of benefit to training within those 2 distant spaces, and not becoming, and that's kind of the key to I think, artificial general intelligence, as opposed to being a specialist. If you're a specialist, you might be good at it, but you might not get that last bit, 10% that really makes you a master at what you're supposed to be your specialty. And a
Yes.
lot of times it's the experiences you have from the outside that helps make you really that good. So, I mean, I think that's my takeaway is that um, that it might be one of the big advantages they have, even over the other bot manufacturers, the fact that they're trying to solve two what seem like dissimilar problems at the same time using the same approach might help them get there quicker.
So the whole business of eyes, we've spent so much time on hands, and Elon says, "Hey, if we have humans have two eyes." When he's talking about a vehicle, we have two eyes, and we've put eight eyes in the car, so we're already way ahead.
Mm.
Maybe there's a ninth eye being contemplated at this point. Some people have asked for this ninth eye, but in the bot, I have to admit that I've just kind of been assuming maybe it was two, maybe there'd be a third eye in the back of the head or something, because mothers have that eye, and
Yeah,
so
most people refer to
certainly,
that as the mother eye.
certainly the bot should have that. But it would seem like, as someone who was really the only part of basketball I was ever any good at was the dribbling and passing. Having a better peripheral vision for that part of the sport would have been a really good help. So possibly either creating an eye that is located differently or has peripheral vision, or putting in a second set of eyes to provide more of that peripheral vision would certainly be a cool thing. Being able to see at great distances, this is obviously a benefit in many, many aspects. So after having seen all of that, have you thought through what you think they might actually be doing in
Yeah,
terms?
I mean that's a big question because you have these three cameras that are up front that have completely different field of views, and then from those field of views, can you blend that together to create the stereo image that you would want that we're used to having by just having basically two cameras mounted with a certain amount of separation. So certainly with the three cameras, they do have a certain separation,
Right.
but getting the calibration of that's right. And that's also something else. They go into a lot of detail in there of calibration
Okay.
and understanding that manufacturing imperfections from one to another means that you need to have some way to be able to go and calibrate the camera references from one to another and to different embodiments that might be of different size. I mean, it's really interesting going through to seeing what they're thinking about either ahead of time or they are just laying it all out in the patent, because sometimes that's what you got to do. Is
Right.
that you have to be kind of vague so they don't really know what's going on, but you need to have enough specificity in there that someone can't challenge you or claim that's there. So it's this weird dance, that goes on in patents of, revealing. It's like a burlesque, right? You just show what you need to show, and that's it. So it does seem interesting. You would think they do that, but if you look at some of the other bots out there and look at their camera suites, also they almost look similar, like they have the three in there. So it's almost like they're all buying it from the same vendor over in Korea or China, because everyone's putting the same thing in their windshields for all 4G. They have almost what seems like the same kind of camera suites up there, because they're probably all thinking the same thing. It's like, oh, we need a wide field of view and all. So it's interesting and why, and I guess the reason they went down that route as opposed to completely mimicking the way it is done for human is because they already have the stuff working in the car.
Yeah.
And the idea is not to deviate too much from it, to be able to leverage as much as possible. And they'll probably go down that. And if they find that was like the wrong way to do it, then they would redo it. But right now they probably see that there's no reason why it shouldn't work, because, their robots on wheels are able to navigate the world perfectly fine at 70 miles per hour.
Yeah.
So certainly it should be able to work for a smaller bot that's, only going 2 to 3 miles per hour.
Right. Yeah. So of course we have all kinds of different tasks. We
Mm-hmm.
have tasks that might require a quick read. We have
Yep.
tasks that might require a fine read, a detailed read.
Yep.
We have tasks that might require a fast moving, something that's moving very rapidly. As I mentioned, we might have something that requires peripheral vision. But if we have the three cameras in the front, but have we noticed on any of the bots out there, including Optimus, have we noticed any cameras on the sides or in the rear?
I think we have. I think we've noticed something that looks around where you expect the ear to be.
Okay.
That there's something there. I thought it was just a single camera, but from the description, it almost sounds like it could be two cameras, or they're leaving it open for that possibility, because it was like, camera on the side, could be facing backwards, could be facing sideways. And then in some way, they dropped the fact that there's 8 cameras in there. It's like, well, wait a minute. I was thinking it was like just one camera over on the sides, but now I'm realizing you actually mean 2. So, okay, it's a similar placement that you see around the car. People do it. That seems pretty obvious.
So you're thinking that's current. I mean, even though this patent is from a couple of years ago, you're thinking that the current thinking or the current
it's hard to say between what they put in there that's describing sort of the state of the art. And again, if this is like a total cut and paste error, then they it may be that they was really talking about the car, not the bot. But I think they were in there. They were using language like the head, and they were showing actual images of the head, which were not any images I'd seen before that looked like more abstract things. Like people might look at it and say, "Oh, that's the Gen 2 bot," and it's like, it's not really the Gen 2 bot. It's just like they just wanted to show a generic image of the camera suites that were on there. Yeah. And so I think that's all it is. I'm not sure. They may have changed it. The impression we've had is that they may have less. Not even sure if they actually have it all the way in the back, if they have the mother's eye or not. But again, you got to patent it just right. You can always take away the cameras. You start putting in there and someone goes, "No, the patent for 12 cameras. It was our idea to put 12 cameras on there."
Yeah, well, it would seem like for police and security guards, military applications, you would absolutely want the eye in the back of the head. But I am having a hard time figuring out why we would need more than 5. So the 3 in the front, I get it.
Right.
1 on each side for peripheral vision.
And well, so I'm guessing what it is that they've got like the one on the side is going this way, and maybe it's a wide field of view, or you're getting some sort of coverage. I don't know if it's angled a little bit forward. And then you have ones that are facing back, like the repeater cameras they have in there. But they face back, but there's still maybe a zone in the back that you can't see. And then you would have like one, the mother's eye that's really back there. So you almost think it's a bit of redundancy. Yeah. But when they showed some of the images, they were not showing complete vision all the way. They were not showing 360. So the impression I had is that Optimus couldn't see behind it. And I used to joke, well, the reason why is because the e-stop button is back there. So if you're going to sneak up from behind it, you want to make sure it can't see you, so you can go ahead and so you put that mother's eye in there, and it's like you don't have a chance.
Yes, right. And or the boss.
And the reason why you want this around is that before you couldn't turn the head, but now you can turn the head. Maybe you don't need all of that. It's going to come down to cost and what kind of requirements you need to have in there. And again, they could be changing this up completely and just throwing everyone off base, assuming it's exactly the same as what you're seeing in the cars.
Holy mackerel. Yeah. So the eyes, of course, are critical. Very, very important. What do we know about the other senses at this point? Because, we've talked about not much.
We know that they have some sort of some kind of tactile sensors on the tips of the fingers that I think I'll have to remember from that one if they talked about it a little bit or not. Now there's like another patent from Sanctuary AI, which has the Phoenix bot. And they have what is probably the most sophisticated hand of the different bot manufacturers that are out there, as far as kind of kinematic complexity and a lot of the sensor suites they're putting in there. And so we know how they're doing it or planning on doing it. So they're using fluidic tactile sensors, which are basically small little cells that are filled with fluids that will envelop the tips. And then behind there are these little pressure sensors where there's like a little channel where when you push on it, the pressure is basically felt anywhere in these other cavities. So back in there is where they can mount like little pressure sensors. So the pressure sensors won't be right on the top. And that way, by having a fluid, that means the pressure can be sensed over a wider area, right? So you don't have to like litter your entire tip with all kinds of pressure sensors. You can have a smaller pressure sensor back there, but it's something much bigger, and you just press on the fluid, and then you'll be able to sense it that way. So that's some of the things they come up with, and they can be curved and everything else, so you can get pretty good dexterity on the finger. What's interesting in the other Sanctuary patent is showing the kinematic structure of their hand. And I'm not sure how many degrees of freedom it has in there, but it's got a lot. It's got it's good, because what they've done in a very ingenious way is that we have the curl of the fingers, and of course they made sure that they have the same number of knuckles in different joints that we have, and their finger lengths seem to be maybe a little bit different for each of them. And then they're able to do this hand movement. And the way they do this hand movement, it's not like they have just another rotation here at the joint. they have like this complex linkage mechanism that actually causes the palm of the hand to kind of deform a little bit and cause the finger to move over.
Huh.
And I mean, there's a lot of degrees of freedom there. It's a really wild mechanism, and not the way I was absolutely expecting it. You know, so they are using tendons to pull in here, but I think the tendons are actuated through like hydraulics. So that might be the actual source for it. And the motion they have is basically the middle finger is locked down to palm. So the middle finger actually cannot abduct, but it doesn't matter because all that matters is the relative displacement between the fingers.
Right.
So you can get whatever, so you can get like the Vulcan mind or the live long and prosper. Now, if you look at your middle finger and I say spread your fingers, you're more than likely going to move the other fingers, and your middle fingers almost. And if you actually want to move your middle finger, you can do it, but you have to kind of really think about it. Yeah. And it hurts, you know, it's like, it's not something, yeah, I can do it, but it's like the one that I don't like to spread out. So this is like forms a rigid structure. And then they have, you know, kind of a rotation here, but it's done, it seems like, just through a complex mechanism. And then their fingertip gets even wilder. So out here, where you call like the distal tip that you have out there, normally you would just make a nice little hinge joint there, right? You know, just put a hinge joint here and here and here. So, you know, that's simple. Or sometimes people call it like a cylindrical joint or a pin joint. And that seems like it would be real simple to make something like that. And when you get out there, it would be even easier because it's a very small kind of area. Turns out they've got like a 4-bar linkage in there for the deflection of that, which may have something to do with the tendon mechanism they're putting there to get some kind of movement out of it in a certain way. And if you look at that, it's like, from an engineering standpoint, it's like, that's complete overkill, because a 4-bar mechanism means you've got like 4 little tiny joints you've got in there that are linked together through those linkage mechanisms. That's not easy to manufacture, so that they've got to have a really strong purpose for it. And some of it might be the kind of motion they're getting there that they want to make sure it emulates what the human hand does much better. And it may also have something to do with the kind of leverage they want to get with the tendons that are going through there. So it's like, holy cow. It's like, I mean, they get 4 degrees, you know, technically 4 degrees of freedom just in that joint. You know, what's normally 1 degree of freedom, they put 4 there. Then you're like going down here 5, and they get 6. And then, you know, they have this articulation here, which you would call that 7, but because they have what looks like another 4-bar linkage in there, it's like almost 8, 9. So like every finger has almost 10 degrees of freedom in the thing. And then it's like, it must be like a 40-degree of freedom hand. Even though, I mean, it's like, you got to be careful. That doesn't mean they've got 40. A lot of them are coupled. So like the individual motion is a little bit different, but still it's like, man, that's just a lot of things moving around in there, and gives you an idea how wild hand designs can be. And I don't know if that's any insight on what Tesla might be thinking about, if they're thinking of doing something like that, or just like, no, that's like overkill. We're still going to stick with the simple designs that we have of pin joints. We're just going to add one more knuckle that wasn't in there. But you never know. I mean, they might see also some advantages to putting some kind of different mechanism in there.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of the use cases. So while you're talking, I'm thinking of use cases. So the first one that comes to my mind is the oboe. Since we've been talking about the violinist has to have a great amount of dexterity and ability to move the fingers in all kinds of different ways on that left hand. The right hand, not so much. But although sometimes it's plucking, but on the oboe, you've got
plucking. It's pizzicato. Come on.
I'm sorry. Anyway, I never played violin. I'm not a string. Well, I played Hawaiian steel guitar. Anyway, oboe though, I picked up oboe a couple of years ago because it was something I always wanted to do. And the oboe I thought was the most difficult instrument in the orchestra because of the double reed. It turns out that is difficult, but not that hard. What's really hard is the little finger on the left hand has 4 different keys that it has to play with, and rapidly. And go ahead, play around with your little finger and just see how much actual dexterity you have in your little finger.
You have very little, almost no strength there. Yeah,
almost no strength on your left hand. And so it would have taken me, I think, years, especially at my age, to develop the kind of strength, dexterity, ability, what do you want to call it, maneuverability, to be able to play all the different possibilities on that oboe. Now, having said that, violin, oboe, but what else? Where else does this humanoid robot need to have that level of complexity in order to do jobs in a factory, let's say?
Yeah, and maybe not so much for jobs in the factory, but beyond that.
Okay.
And again, a lot of the mission of Sanctuary is to really try to get closer to AGI, and the feeling is that the closer the hand mimics what the human hand is like, easier it is both to teach it telerobotically and to maybe give it this idea of a full embodiment of what it's like to be a human. And they've also put a lot in there on the sensors. So when you read in there about the kind of sensors they have in there, they're also kind of vague, but they're looking at being able to do pressure and temperature and force. So they want to get a complete sense of what's going on, because it's very important for them to be able to do the training and get the bot to behave like a human. So I mean, it's actually in the Tesla patent. I'm trying to remember the wording of it, but there was like a little part in there that was almost like why the humanoid form. And it was like a rather interesting twist. Part of it was because certain tasks are already set up for humanoids, so it's easier to do that. And other times there's certain tasks in which it's desired for it to be done with something that has the appearance of a human. So it could be another way, but it's actually like coming around. It's like, sometimes we just prefer to actually a mechanism that looks more like a human than a machine.
Yes.
And then also talked about, then there'll be the other applications where humanoid form is not even needed or something different. So it's like, oh, okay. So Tesla is thinking, at least from the standpoint of the patent, of these other embodiments later on that won't be humanoid at all, or just,
some portion
kind of,
just the hand.
Third arm. Yeah. 10 fingers on a hand, or something like that.
We can contemplate the movies that can be made around these.
There could be all sorts of interesting things. So that's kind of a little bit of a summary and wrap up there. I mean,
well, what about the sense of smell? It's pretty interesting that in all these different things that we've been doing over the last 50 years in terms of computerization, in terms of mimicry of human capabilities, et cetera, the one that seems to be the least advanced, maybe I'm completely wrong, but we don't really seem to be able to create. I went to some movie. What was it? Oh, it was something I was doing on my vacation. There was some kind of a movie that was being shown, and they said, now there will be a smell involved. So we've had these momentary times in the theater, whatever, where we've been engaged with a smell, but rarely. And then we've also got the opposite. We're not really seeing opportunities where machines are able to detect smells very well.
Oh yeah, they're pretty bad at that. I mean, I've heard about these like electronic noses that they're trying to come up with that are able to do certain things, but they can never compete with a dog. The dog is just much better. Which because they keep on thinking we want to come up with something so that we can for screening of baggage at airports,
right?
And it's still in the end, a bloodhound is a lot better than anything that they come up with. And of course, like those weird swabs that they have to do. It's like, oh, your bag, come over here. Mr. Kirk, is it okay? I'm going to do this right now. And they take out that swab and they got to go over and look at it. And they're only able to find a small portion of things from that. So it's amazing how biology has been able to come up with much better sensors there. And it's probably important. The question is how important it is in certain environments. I mean, in the factory, you usually don't need smells for doing very much, except it kind of warns you something. It's like something doesn't smell right. We better get out of here. Or it might tell you like, something is like burning or overheating or something like that. And clearly, if you're working in a kitchen or doing something like that, the sense of taste, the sense of smell is very important to what you're doing. Right. But most factory operations, I mean, you actually try to cover up so you don't smell anything, as opposed to actually making it part of the process. Now, auditory is more important. So, I mean, that and it's a lot easier to do as well, but there's extreme importance to being able to take auditory signals when you're working in the factory to give an idea where the so if you're working a machine tool and it doesn't sound quite right, then it can tell you, oh, okay, either the tool bit is starting to wear down, or like it's going a bit too fast. I'm going, my depth of cut's too much, or maybe I forgot to turn the lubricant on. It's like there's all these things that immediately when you hear that sound, whoops, something's wrong here. Let's go ahead and investigate.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And of course, hearing is our auditory is something that we have, quite a bit of experience with.
Mhm.
What about sixth sense?
Oh, you mean predicting the future? So some sort
Well,
of
intuition,
intuition. Oh, yeah. So
being able to
yeah.
read somebody's mind, being able to read their emotions, their thoughts,
Yeah, yeah, and I think we're getting close to that because FSD seems to be pretty good at anticipating what's about to happen a lot better than it was. Some of the drives I got, it's a bit uncanny in how it's able to sort of read a situation really quite well, and especially occluded objects like pedestrians that are starting to walk out in the street and then go, it's kind of blocking your field of view. And I instinctively know these pedestrians are going to show up within a second or two. And FSD already knows that. It's like it's sort of seen what's going on. So it's getting better and better at that. Whether it's reading body language yet, I don't think it's quite there yet, but it seems to be getting close. Sometimes it's able to tell when a pedestrian is just walking down the sidewalk and when they're doing some kind of motion that may result in them actually coming into the street. And it used to be, it was really bad at that, and it saw the pedestrian like, I'm afraid, slow down.
right?
And now it's like, no problem. We'll just kind of go on by. It's fine. And then you'll see something else where a person makes a move or something. And then it's like, oh, okay, I better slow down and I'll be the same way. Sometimes I'll say, well, another person's not really doing it. It's just because they're talking on their cell phone and they're distracted and they're just walking randomly. And others, I'll see it and like immediately I'll react. I won't like hit the brakes or anything like that, but my foot's off the gas. I'm like double checking to make sure it's like, okay, do I have to? And you can get the sense that FSD is doing the same thing like that as well. So these things are going to come as you get more and more data, no doubt about it.
On that sidebar, have you been talking much on your FSD recently to have any thoughts about where we're sitting as we're almost about ready to get 12.4?
Yeah, we're waiting on that. And again, I'm pretty pleased with a lot of things that I'm seeing going around. Traffic circle had sort of was fun last week. Is that my son and a friend of his wanted to go into downtown Sarasota and drove him down there. And his friend had never been in a Tesla before, nor in full self-driving. And so he was just kind of shocked that the car could do it. And there were a couple of situations that, again, this traffic circle, which is like busy Friday night and a lot of pedestrians going back and forth, and did a couple moves that I just like could not believe at first. That it was like, well, that there was like this peer pressure one where it stopped really early before going in there. So it didn't block the intersection. And the car next to me stopped next to me as well, almost like it was deciding it shouldn't advance ahead forward either for the same reason. And then when it was clear and ready to go, it waited for the pedestrians. But then we came up to another crosswalk where you could see on the side, there was a family getting ready to cross. And they were like, oh, it's like, trust the system. And FSD came right to a stop and said, you guys, you got to have more faith in technology. You consider yourself millennials here? I mean, come on. Get with the program. And so after that, they had a lot more confidence. So again, at the first time, people will freak out and think it's not going to do its job. And I was pretty sure. I mean, it was on the ready. I was ready to hit the brake if I had to, but I was going to let it have its chance. And it's like, it came and it slowed down really comfortably. So it knew what it was doing. And I could feel the slowdown right at the point that I was about to hit the brake. So it's like, okay, I didn't have to panic myself,
I saw a video this morning, which is a little scary.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you saw it too on X, where the FSD decided to pass up a bunch of cars and cut into the left turn lane.
Yeah.
Where it saw an opportunity.
Yeah, that's because it was in an assertive mode.
That's
the ass mode that Elon's been talking about. Yeah, I mean, it's this weird thing. It's because it queued up back so far that sometimes it's not quite sure. Oh, is this a stalled vehicle, or I'm being blocked, or it may not be having this midterm planning where it realizes that may be the problem. And because one of the things that this version of FSD has been really stellar at is getting around cars that are blocking things. So again, it had the situation, this traffic circle I was in, that it was doing everything right, coming to a stop, and there was a lead car in front of me, and in front of that car was another vehicle that decided to stop right at the crosswalk to get some passengers on. Well, the car in front of me saw exactly what was going on. He says, I'm having none of this. And like, he just pulls around while that car's blocking traffic. So FSD started to move up, and then also came to the same conclusion and started to pass. But then it stopped because then it noticed that there were pedestrians actually getting ready to walk into the crosswalk. I was talking about, that's the occlusion I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And sort of saw that and said, well, I've got to wait for them to pass. And then as they started to pass, it realized that the vehicle that was causing the problem was going to move, and then it got in behind and did the same thing. But I had other situations of delivery vehicles that were clearly blocking the road, that it was just getting around, timing it just right, knowing when to wait, knowing what to do. And so that's a really good behavior. But the extreme of that is it's just assuming, oh, the left lane is blocked here. Someone must be doing a delivery. And let's get around that. And because my turn is another 200 meters up here. And of course, it found the perfect gap. Right. It actually didn't, it was so good in that it didn't slow people down at all, because that driver was asleep at the wheel.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He wasn't moving when he should have. And then it just went right on in. And it's like, didn't affect anything. But it almost served a better purpose. Yeah. Because it wasn't clogging up that lane trying to get into the left lane.
I always make that claim when I do that move.
Yeah. You're actually doing it. In some ways, in some ways you are. I've had some situations like that where we went over, and the cars up the front were just so slow going in there. They left such a gap. I got in there without impeding the traffic. Yeah. And then I wasn't part of the problem back there. Right. So yeah, you can pat yourself in the back there and say that you're actually doing good, because a lot of people are really bad at figuring out how to do zippers and all this other stuff.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I've got my arguments all planned out.
Oh yeah. Officer, I wasn't impeding traffic or anything. I made things better. What are you complaining about here? I am just,
it's amazing. It's just amazing. Of course, we're probably going to be seeing 12.4, all of us, maybe later this week. Yep. And talking in terms of 5 to 10 times fewer interruptions and no nag. I mean, that combination.
Oh, that's going to be great without the nag. That's going to be really interesting. Now, what I'm wondering is going to happen is when we finally get the version with Grok integration. Yeah. Where we're then able to have a dialogue with it, and literally dialogue. So not say, please navigate to here, but have a dialogue that you can say, I'd prefer you to go faster or slower. Watch out for that speed bump up here. Things like that. And it also, talking back to you, because evidently Waymo will do stuff like that. It'll say slowing down for speed bump, this and that. And I think it would be nice to have more of that feedback between the passenger and what's going on. So if you know what's going on, you're going to be more comfortable, and you can also make a suggestion, because maybe the roads a little bit better. Because with the Uber driver, sometimes like, oh yeah, just pull up over there, or this is a little bit weird. So you give them a little bit of advanced knowledge, and it allows them to navigate it better. So there's no harm in being able to do that. But at the same time, it has to be to realize it's the captain of the ship, and it's the one that's making the decisions. You can make a few suggestions, but if you're making a stupid suggestion, you can just say, no, bad idea. Because the backseat driver is like, well, once you get over in the left lane, you go and do it, and you get slammed into by the car that you didn't see that was coming at a high speed, right? So FSD is going to know when you give it a dumb idea. It's like, nah, not doing that. I know you're suggesting I get in the left lane, but chill out here. Trust me, I know what I'm doing. But other times, it may be that you can get it out of a sticky situation. So if Grok or some sort of interface there is really good, when you get in that situation, it's like, oh, Robotaxi is stuck in the construction site. It doesn't know what to do. Yeah. Well, you talk it through the problem. Right. So you can be there and tell it, just back up a few feet, and then, you'd be able to see, so just think about it. You become that extra set of eyes to allow you to get around. And I think that will be interesting. And I think that's why the Robotaxi we see may not have controls, because the controls may actually be language and a little bit on the touchscreen, a few things in there that it's not like you really need to have the steering wheel to take over. It's just that, those edge cases they're trying to deal with, you just talk your way through it. Yeah, and we want Grok, and we want it to be Grok, and we want to also be able to put it into the sarcastic mode. We want it to, we want it to be fun. We want it to be humorous. We want it to be a companion as we're driving along. Yeah, all right. The future is. What does Elon say? It's ironic, or the most likely case is the ironic. Yeah, yes, most likely or most entertaining outcome is the ironic, or something like that. Yeah. I think we're definitely about to embark on the irony that he's talking about all this time. Scott, thank you. I know you've got a hard cutoff. Welcome. We appreciate, as always, coming on in the morning, and
until next time, we'll see if maybe this week we'll have some actually YouTube, some stuff coming out from these different makers with something new to talk about. But
Maybe. Yeah.
maybe, come
Yeah.
on. Yeah, let's get these
Well,
guys going.
exactly. So,
Okay, thanks, Scott. And to all of you out there, it has been great
yep.
talking.
Talk to you later.